My name is Warren Lucas. I'm president of the North Salem Historical Society, and the date is June 17, 1977. After more than a year of stop-and-go planning, the Historical Society is happy to present your neighbor and friend, Jane D. McCarty, granddaughter of our late president, Ulysses S. Grant. Jane is going to share with us tonight the memories of living, growing up, and life at Meriwether, the former Grant homestead in North Salem. Our interviewer, Jane's cousin, a former past president of the Historical Society, is Thomas L. Purdy, Jr.
Good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly, Mrs. Jane Grant McCarty needs really no introduction to people here in North Salem, particularly the older residents, as she's lived most of her life here in town. In fact, she went to the little one-room schoolhouse, which is located between here and the town hall, and right on 116. Now, just in case there's any doubt in anybody's mind here, just where the property is that we're going to be discussing this evening, and I would like to explain that it's just about a half a mile south of here, between Route 121 and 124, on the other side of the Tigris River. Now, the large house now is owned by the Beckwiths, and what was known always as the schoolhouse is the Armstrong's home. And until recently, the house that was always known as the cottage, which is right on the corner, was the Lippman's home. The farm was, a large part of it is now known as the Dansker property. There's some doubt in minds, us all here in the community, just who owns it, but it's referred to as the Dansker property. Now, over on the other side of Route 121, there was an even larger parcel of land, which went up and included the home that Maria Spate now has. It was also in the Grant farm.
Anyway, General Grant was, you all know from the history book as much as I do about it, really, but he was born on April 27th in 1822 over in Claremont County, Ohio. And Ohio figured largely in his life, most of his life. And we died in 1885, so he didn't have too many years, you see, to enjoy visiting at the what's always been called the Grant Place, or Meriwether Farm.
And he had quite a number of children, didn't he? I have heard a lot of this time and again, but I have forgotten. So a lot of this is as new to me as it is to everyone else. Now, he had how many children?
Well, he had 3 boys and a daughter, 3 sons and a daughter, Fred and Ulysses Jr., and Nellie, the girl, the daughter, and Jessie.
And Ulysses Jr. Was your grandfather. That's correct, isn't it? Now, Ulysses Grant Jr.
Well, he married Fanny Josephine Chaffee, who was the daughter of Senator Jerome B. Chaffee, who was fairly prominent, quite prominent, I would say, and I can't tell you the date that he was instrumental in bringing Colorado into the Union as a state. She was Fanny Josephine Chaffee. The place was bought by her father and given to her as a wedding present.
That is the Grant Place.
The Grant Place, here.
Was bought by, not by the Grants.
No.
But by Senator Chaffee for his daughter.
Inland Vale.
Inland Vale, before, when the Chaffees, when Senator Chaffee bought it for his daughter. That's correct.
That's correct. They were city people, my grandparents, and so when they came out and did all this remodeling, the house was remodeled to be as city life was, with the basement kitchen and all of that. I think that's interesting to people who now come out to the country because they want to live in a country house, and it was not so in that day.
Well, let's pursue the family a little bit that lived there. We have General Grant's son and his daughter-in-law there now. Now, what was there? They were the first Grants, really, to live there.
Yes.
And did the General ever really live there, or did he, what was his association?
Well, he came up and spent time visiting, as people do, you know. But as I said before, he didn't have very much time between the time he had finished his world cruise, world tour, and the year that he died, which was 1885. So he didn't have an awful lot of time to spend there. But he did spend time. He had his horses, some very beautiful prize horses, which he expected to develop into quite a horse farm, I guess you might call it.
Well, I thought you told me that the Sultan of Turkey gave him some horse,
I've heard that.
that he had, and he bred horses.
He did do that. And he had some beautiful horses, some lovely carriages, and when we came on the scene, there still were a few carriages and some tack. You know, the silver bridle and silver buckle with the USG on them, the monogram.
What was he had his own special horse there.
Linden Tree by name.
Linden Tree.
Mm-hmm.
That was his.
Big, looked like a dapple. I don't really know. I've only seen a picture of it. Big dapple gray. Arabian.
Now, was that well, what I also would like to pursue a little bit the family that were there. Now, we have, as I say, General Grant's son and his wife. Now, how many children did they have, and from which one are you descended?
Well, they had 5 children. The girl first, and then a boy. The boy being Chaffee Grant, my father.
He was the first. He was the eldest.
No, Miriam was the oldest, and then
Oldest girl.
another girl, Julia, and then another girl, Fanny, that you know about. And the youngest one was Ulysses IV. And the reason that he was Ulysses IV, being the son of Ulysses Jr., does sound a bit peculiar, but the oldest son of General Grant, Fred Grant, had, before that time, had a son. And he named his son Ulysses. And that one couldn't be Junior, of course, he had to be 3rd. So that's why my little uncle had to go through life with the weight of number 4 at the end of his name.
Well, I would just like to throw in something here that might be of interest. Jane mentioned Fanny, one of the daughters.
Oh, I didn't know he was going to tell that.
That I knew about. Well, Fanny was my oldest brother's first wife. I mentioned that when he married Jane's mother, that was his second marriage. Well, his first marriage was Fanny Grant, and his second marriage was Jane's mother. And same way, Jane's mother's first marriage was Chaffee Grant. So my brother and Jane's father married, mother married brother and sister. I hope that's clear.
I don't think he should have done this.
Gets rather confusing. But
So
anyway.
Tommy is my step-half uncle, actually.
not cousin as you mentioned for a while. Now let's. Well, then you had quite a big family that lived there or not you, but the Grants had a pretty big family that lived there in the house. And can you tell us a little bit about the house itself? You mentioned to me that, or you said that the Libby's bought it, and you can see the picture of it as the Libby house. I think the artist took quite a little license with the hills and things around it and photography here. But the general appearance of the house has certainly changed a good deal. And who is responsible for that change?
Oh, my grandfather Grant had Stanford White, somebody in Stanford White's office, do with changes. And it was done in the style of that day and age, which is many cupolas and a lot of superstructure made of wood and shingles and all. And we never thought it was as pretty as if he left it alone entirely, but then, what difference?
I think it's very interesting that Stanford White said he was probably the outstanding architect in the country at that time. That we had something here in North Salem that
they really did a good job. The house is beautifully built.
And you were going to also tell a little bit about the way he did the house, about the doors and stairs and things such as that. I think people that haven't been in the house would be interested to know a little bit.
Well, it was always impressive to everybody because it is a huge house with very large rooms, and all the doors are oversized doors, but just push with your finger and they close quietly and evenly instead of. I've never been in a house with doors that function like that. But that's just one thing. The wallpaper on the walls had been put on, say 1880. And as far as I know, I do know that up till 1945, when my mother sold it, the wallpaper, there wasn't a crack in it. It was just like leather on the walls. It was pretty large. The rooms themselves were large. And another thing that might interest the distaff side of the audience is to remember and consider the fact that there was no electricity, which means that house with all those rooms had to be lighted with the kerosene lamps. And if you can picture the number of kerosene lamps that it would take for the globes to be washed and the wicks to be trimmed, think of it.
Some of the furnishings was really Edwardian style.
Yes.
And another thing you mentioned was the number of driveways, the extraordinary number of driveways into the place, its services.
5 entrances.
You could enter it from 5 different directions, and they weren't just driveways. There were beautiful trees on either side. It was just an avenue of trees going into them. Particularly the one coming from 121 from the north, I remember. It was a lovely...
Yes, that was maybe the longest one.
That was